Welcome to Memoirs of a Wandering Ninja, Walking the Path of Enlightenment with my good friend Terry Hodgkinson. Hello, I'm Mike Wixon, and in the studio with me is author of said book, and a very interesting character indeed, a guy that I look to as a reference point for many different things. Everything from, Terry, this hurts, and how can I use the right kinds of ancient medicine to fix it, to I can't hear anything but noise in the world, which is, funny enough, our topic today. Welcome, Terry.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you. You and I have had a discussion just prior to starting the show today about what is going on in the world, and not so much about the very specific events of the world, but how noisy the world is and how difficult it can be to maintain a center of positivity, focus, awareness of more than just what we're inundated with.
Yeah, you know, if you really want to lose your mind, probably one of the best ways that you can do that is turn on the news first thing in the morning when you wake up, sit yourself down, and have a look. And you'll see all the different chaotic activities and events that are taking place, not just in your own city, but worldwide. I mean, there's no place in the world that doesn't have something that's going on, from floods to corruption to devastation to, you name it, you'll be able to see it. And so many people who have the best intentions don't want to get sucked into this media machine, but they do, and it creates even more havoc and more disharmony. And there are better ways to deal with things than to fall into that trap.
Well, the truth is, since the beginning of time, and in many, many more horrific ways in the history of our society, we have experienced just the same size of atrocities and injustices and neglect in certain ways. And
Definitely.
So I don't think that this is a new phenomenon, and I think what is new in the history of society is how it is portrayed and then delivered to us. I mean, we all have up-to-the-minute updates of news that is 100% inaccurate. Not 100% of the time,
I know
but
what you're saying.
very, very
Yes.
often. And that creates noise that we have to digest and internalize.
Yeah. And I think the unfortunate thing is that when people listen to the news or hear the broadcasts or look at the internet as their source of true information, too many people believe that everything that is said has to be true because it's coming from professional people. It's coming from people who do this for a living. And the reality is that it's not always true. And the problem with that is you get so worked up. I mean, I have close friends who are worked up over a number of issues in the news today, and they've lost their balance. They've lost their centeredness. And their day, half to 3/4 of their day is ruined because they're so emotional, and they know that. And, I'm helping them to get back to center with some breathing exercises, with some perceptual exercises, just so that they can come back and realize that they need to control their mind and not their mind control them.
Terry, what are some of these perceptions that can set people on fire in such a way? And how can we rein those back in?
One of the number one perceptions that sets people on fire is they look at things from a victim mentality. As soon as they see or they feel or they identify with being a victim in some way, all of a sudden the emotions start kicking in, and that fight, sort of mechanism kicks in as well. And
that
that's
fight
it.
or flight
That's right.
instinct that we have. And so they become instantly
enraged.
Or that adrenaline begins to go.
Yeah. And, that's an old mechanism that we have biologically in our genes, and it's useful for certain situations, like running from bears, like running from forest fires.
Right.
But
running from comets, yes, historically, yeah.
Of course, it gives us that extra adrenaline rush, and we can, boogie it out of there.
Yeah.
But turning on the news and having that same effect day after day after day, or listening to other people who are enraged and having those hormones surge through our body, adrenaline, the more deadly or more worse hormone called cortisol, it just wreaks havoc on our body day after day. And so we need to disassociate. We need to understand that there are certain things that are happening in society. There will always be certain things that are happening in society. And I'm not saying not to care. because caring is an appropriate behavior. But how you do that makes a world of difference, because if you're enraged, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping society.
I think that the other thing is, I as a radio guy, visit a site called fark.com, and it is, I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a sort of a sardonic look at the media, dumb stories and misrepresented stories and over-reported stories. But recently read a book that was published by the guy who put that website out, and in that book he talks about how the media cannibalizes itself. If you listen to the media, they report on something, they correct what they originally reported, they re-report, reanalyze, and overanalyze the one thing that they can actually report on, and then they self-analyze and say, well, the media contributed to this issue. Mm-hmm. And still we let them go on. Yeah. Even though they've admitted they just make noise.
Yeah, and the ironic thing about it, Mike, is that people will look at what they say and get so inundated by it, so affected by what's happening, and they don't realize that these people are being paid to do this. I mean, this is how they make their living. Of course they want to have all the aspects, even if they're not true, out there, because if they can draw more attention, then they're getting more ratings and they're getting more money.
Have you ever heard this one or anything like this? Lead in your children's drinking water at school? News at 11. Mm-hmm. And only to find out that, truthfully, no, there is no lead in our children's drinking water, and a test just proved it at City Hall.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of reporting, getting somebody worked up for no reason and then dropping them with a sense of relief, just for the sake of getting and toying with that emotion, I think.
Leading titles, and the media uses it all the time. It's no different than the carrot. You know, if I put a carrot in front of a donkey, the donkey's going to move forward because it wants that carrot. And with society today, it seems that every little leading title that is emotionally charged, people want it. They want to know about it. What's happening? How's that working?
That's exactly right.
All of a sudden, they find out the truth that, well, it wasn't as big as what was reported. Oh, okay, and the adrenaline comes down. And you do that enough times, and it's just like holding a carrot in front of that donkey. They get addicted to that feeling of, I want to know, I need to know, I have to know. And you create that perpetual cycle of following that carrot.
We want to break that cycle. Breathing exercises, perceptual
and understanding, realizing the truth that while the media has its place, unfortunately, it's not the place that most people think, and they need to disconnect. You know, when I watch a media show and I see a lot of tragic things happening in the world today, the first thing that I feel is not anger. The first thing that I feel is compassion. You know, if I'm watching something and there's a number of people that have perished because of a particular disaster, the very first thing I feel is compassion for those people and for their families, you know, and that allows me to keep a level head and say, well, what can we do? I mean, obviously something took place in this particular event. What can be done to help prevent it from ever happening again? And yes, if somebody has made a mistake or is criminally responsible, they need to be brought to justice, or it needs to be figured out. But let's keep our head about it. Let's keep calm, figure it out so it doesn't happen again, the best of our ability, and move on from there.
By the way, you're listening to Memoirs of a Wandering Ninja with Terry Hodgkinson, and today we're talking about a noisy world and keeping your focus and center in a place where you can easily be distracted from the important things that keep you healthy and keep you happy. Now, we're not saying ignore the news or don't participate in change in the world based on what you've learned, but there are only so many hours in a day that a human being is built to handle that sort of information. And it quickly turns to obsession, overanalyzing, and for a lot of people, that obsession can start to ruin their lives. Do you often see people, and maybe it's not just the news, but it could just be how people are feeling about just existing in a society that is so fast-moving?
Definitely. The amount of information that comes at us nowadays, it is just overwhelming. And I know a lot of people in certain age brackets have a very difficult time keeping up with that, and I won't mention.
Hello? Is there anybody here in the room that could be of that category?
Yeah. And now a lot of people say, well, the younger generations can't handle it. But the thing is that, yeah, they might be able to handle it now. But, I've also seen a lot of the younger generations as scatterbrains. They're all over the place because they're almost hooked to the information that's coming in. And there's no, time to relax with things and let them settle, let them digest. Really review them, really reflect on them. Rather, it's move on to the next thing. Let's get that iPhone going. Let's get that iPad. Let's get the latest on this and that and this information here. And I found that with, kids, you pull up to a light and watch them walking across, from one side of the street to the other side of the street. They can't take their eyes off of their phone, whether they're texting or they're on the internet or, I almost hit a young lady who was jogging because she was listening to her MP3 player or iPhone, whatever it was, while she was jogging. And she was looking to the right, waiting for the truck to pass. And I was just coming up, and as soon as she saw the truck pass, she did not look to the left. And I was honking the horn slightly, and she just bolted across. She didn't hear my horn because she had her music up so loud in her ears that she did not even pay attention to the cars coming the other way.
I think sometimes we plug in our own noise to block out the world.
You're right.
And I think that is, and you see that in young people, and I'll say this, Terry, if there is a formula that you have that will unplug the youth of today to let their hearts be quiet and their minds be quiet on their own, you could really make breakthrough, because I think that is a huge challenge.
Yeah, there are many different things that can help with that, but the thing is that you need youth of today to be interested in pursuing formulas like that. And these formulas have been around for thousands of years, whether it be meditation or contemplation or reflection, just settling the mind. The mind has this wonderful capability of traveling at, and this is in excess, but 1,000 kilometers, a minute with different thoughts. It can jump here, jump there, jump here. It's all over the map. And it's a beautiful thing when you really need to brainstorm something.
Sure.
Okay? But there's a time where you need to quiet it down too. And I think this is what a lot of people are missing, is that quiet time. And I hear people all the time, I can't be quiet. I can't relax. I've got to keep going. No, you're addicted to that adrenaline rush. You're addicted to that busyness in your mind. And the thing is that your mind will work just as well, if not better, if you take some time out and spend it for quiet time.
Okay, well, let's spend the last few minutes that we have then talking a little bit about some practical exercises that can be done to help people get into that state. And, I just touching on the youth and unplugging them and quieting the mind, one of the things that occurs to me is that maybe we could create a video game that does that. What do you say?
Yeah, or an app,
An app, that's right. Quiet your mind.
Yeah.
Disguise it as today's top 10 rap hits and... I don't think we can infiltrate the mind that way. But maybe some exercises, Terry, that you think would help?
Yeah, sure. There's a number of different things. I was teaching a meditation seminar last week, and I had a number of people out for it. And I taught a number of different meditation techniques. And the one thing that I said, it was a 2-hour seminar, the one thing that I brought them back to is, if there's only one thing that you remember about this whole seminar, because I went over probably 5 or 6 different techniques, I said, just remember this. Breathe in and keep your attention fully on your breath inward. Breathe out and keep your attention fully on your breath outward. If your mind strays away from that, just gently bring it back. Don't yank it back. Don't get anxious. Don't get frustrated, and don't get angry, because you're defeating the purpose.
Just head back that way.
Just say, hey, that's not the way we want to go.
Yeah.
Come on back here for a second.
Yeah.
And if you do that enough times, Mike, if you actually just be gentle enough with your mind to guide it back to your breathing process, it doesn't have to be for half an hour. It could be even for just a couple of minutes a day. If you do that enough times, your mind will learn. That's the beautiful thing about the mind, is it can learn to do what it's taught, because you're programming your mind every single day. And that's what people don't realize, is that you're programming it whether you're conscious of that programming or whether you're not conscious of that programming.
I don't know if you recall giving that bit of advice about following your breath to me. Do you remember giving me that advice? Because I've used it every single day since. And I use it in 2 instances. One, when I need to cool down and just chill out.
Right.
And 2, when I want to go to sleep.
Yes.
It is amazing
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
It is absolutely amazing. It does something to you metaphysically that just calms you to the point where if it's the midday and you need a nap, it's a great way to go.
Yes.
But it likely won't just put you to sleep. But I do find it a very relaxing way just to calm my mind at night.
Wonderful. Happy to hear that.
I find in my mind waves, like I'm coasting on slow motion waves. And that's how it begins to feel for me. And before I know it, I'm not focusing on my breath at all. I'm focusing on the waves.
Okay.
And it's interesting, and I can feel that transition.
Yeah.
So that's a really good exercise. I'll endorse that one myself.
Yeah, a couple of others just to note, and they're simple exercises. And these ones can be done indoors or outdoors, but there's another one called walking meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And the walking is very slow, and you just put your attention on the upward motion as you bring your foot up, and as you step, and as you place, and as you bring it down. And you just keep your attention on that as you continue to do that. If you're going so fast that you're not with your walking movements, then you're going too fast. You need to slow it down. Some people like the physical meditations where you're actually doing something. That will help to slow the mind down and put it in not the future and not the past, but keep it in what you're doing
At that very moment.
right now. And this can be done in nature or it could be done in an environment here, like in an office environment. The main thing is get your mind out of the extremities and bring it into the center. And that's what your breathing does as well.
Sometimes when you are doing something physical, like you say, that is repetitive, this is going to sound silly. Ironing, I find to be
Yes.
very, in fact, my wife really appreciates it as well. But I find ironing or cutting the grass,
Definitely.
Repetitive motions
Yes.
where you're quiet and your mouth isn't moving and you're only using your ears and hearing your breath or your surroundings.
Totally. And here's the secret to that is that when you're actually doing the activity, you have to be fully into it. So you can't be thinking about what am I going to do later on after this, or, oh man, I don't have time to do this.
It has to be, is the grass even? Am I in the right line of?
Yeah, it has to be you're there in the moment.
Right.
And so your mind is with the activity that you're doing, and it's not straying because you're right there. And there is nothing else. If you're mowing the lawn, if you're ironing, if you're doing something else, you're right there, right now doing it. And that's all that there is.
I will recommend a book to you, the listener. It is called Memoirs of a Wandering Ninja, Walking the Path of Enlightenment. And it's an interesting book, and I'll tell you why. You can follow Terry's journey from ashram to ashram here. And it's so beautifully woven, this book, with ancient lore and lesson alongside practical experience and your perception of what that did for you.
Yes.
And how others might use it. It's a really cool book. I know that's probably not the greatest description, but it is really cool, Terry, and I like it. I think that people need to understand that you went and learned a bunch of things, met a bunch of doctors, met a bunch of very wise, instructional people in the worlds of meditation and yoga and the martial arts.
Yes. A very long history of martial arts, meditation, alternative ways of thinking in regards to helping a person, myself mainly in the beginning, reach that state of centeredness and reach that state of harmonious interaction.
Yeah. It is a really interesting read on that basis. And we'll make that information available at podalmighty.com and on the website for the show. I would encourage you, if you enjoyed this podcast, there will be many more. Terry is a very interesting guy, and every week we learn something new about how to handle life around us and feel better about ourselves and other people. You can download the show at iTunes. You can subscribe there and also find the show at podalmighty.com. Stay tuned just for a moment here because I asked Terry to put together a couple of interesting tidbits of products that you can participate in getting. One of them is a really interesting acupuncture, no needle acupuncture product that I'm using for my back at the moment, and I'll keep you updated on that. And then the other is a meditative tool that I think we fight over it here in the studio. So I think you'll be interested in hearing about that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Mike, for having me here today.